Welcome to the Gunpowders, Enlightenment, and Revolutions test review. Please make sure you have your self-assessment for this unit ready to go, and a pencil or a pen and a highlighter so you can write in some things that you might want to add in with this review. You should have your self-assessment or your study guide done before you look at this video. So if you haven't completed it, I would go through real quick, pause it, complete your self-assessment, and then come back to the video and we'll go over it together. So let's get reviewing. Academic vocabulary. We're going to review the academic vocabulary that we're going to be testing. This is the group of words that you should know by recall, like bam, like 2 + 2 is 4. Right off the top of your head, you should know that definition. It's in a matching section on the test, so you'll have a word bank and then the definitions below, and you just plug it in where they go. So let's get to those academic vocabulary terms. The first one is capitalism. Capitalism is an economic system used by nations, and it's based on a supply and demand system. If the country wants Starbucks, okay, then every city should have a Starbucks, okay, supply and demand kind of thing, all right? Nationalism is pride and loyalty for your country. Now, when we get to World War I and World War II, we're going to see nationalism spin out of control, and that is called jingoism. But this is like basically just your, gosh, you know what? I love and I have pride from where I am from, okay? Gunpowder empires. This is a term, a periodization term that we learned from the first unit, that historians came together and they thought, when we're talking about the Ottoman Empire, the Sved Empire, and the Mughal Empire, those are empires that were first in line to use gunpowder as ammunition to fight and to expand their empires. So why not coin the phrase gunpowder empire? So please just remember that it is those three empires, the Ottoman, the Safavid, and the Mughal. Absolutism. Absolutism is when one leader has complete control over a nation. Republicanism. Okay, this is based upon that feeling that a country should be organized in a way that it represents all of the people that are using that republic form of government. So republicanism. Coerced labor. There's two forms of coerced labor. One is when you're forcibly taken and sold into slavery and you're forced to work that way. Or if you're trying to escape a country but you don't have the money to get on a ship and go somewhere else, people will sponsor you and pay for your ticket over to that country. And when you get there, you have to work off the cost of that ticket. Okay, coerced labor. You could argue the fact that trafficking humans, what people are doing today, is a form of coerced labor. Okay, people are paying their plane ticket to go from oppressed nations to the United States, for example, and once they get here, they're forced to work off that plane ticket. But sometimes they add living expenses, etc., to that debt. And then, they're in that forced labor situation for years in order to get out of it. And some people just don't get out of it. They get taken advantage of, and that's pretty sad. We have revolution. Revolution is a sudden change in the government or an idea, so that people will get organized and rise up against a government or the idea. Revolution. Popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty is the belief that a government should have representation of the people. Okay, of the people. And right now, in 2021, I truly believe here in the United States, the House of Representatives is a true representation of the people. It's very diverse racially, religiously. People have different sexual orientations, etc. Like, it is this true representation of the melting pot here in the United States. Inalienable rights. Inalienable rights are those human rights that nobody can take away because you are human. They're inborn rights. Because you are a human, you have these rights. And a government has no business taking those rights away. Now, they can govern those rights, but they cannot take the rights away. Scientific revolution. Remember that this is a time period where science is fighting against the church. Prior to science, the church was governing the way you were making decisions in your family and your job, etc. All of a sudden, science is creeping in and proving some of those things that they just took for granted might be wrong. Just think about it. People started looking at some of those biblical stories and going, is that physically possible to do? For example, Noah's Ark. Is it physically possible to build an ark big enough to house two of every animal on the planet? Okay. In my opinion, no, but if you believe, that's perfectly fine. That's why we live where we live. But, people were looking at it and, science was kind of proving people that maybe you should rethink things, okay? And then scientific discoveries were made, electricity, that kind of stuff. So it was a really cool time in history. Also, some really cool stories were written at this time based upon science and those discoveries. For example, Frankenstein was written at this time. Constitutionalism. That's when a country is run on a documented system. All of their laws are written on a document. Now, remember in U.S. history, when after the colonists won the revolution, yay, we won. They're like, oh, now what? They had, excuse my language, an oh shit moment. Like, okay, how are we going to run this country? We won the war, so now what? So they wrote the Articles of the Confederation. That didn't work. So they had to go back and redraft a document, and they wrote the Constitution. So now we run our government based upon the Constitution. I mean, literally, it is the playbook of our nation. And so constitutionalism literally is the term that you coin for a country running its power based upon a written document. Now, those terms are over. Now we have to go to content terms. These are the terms that they go a little bit beyond just knowing the definition. You have to apply the definition and might have to think about it a little bit in order to apply it. So let's dive into those content terms. John Locke and his views on people. We know a lot about John Locke, okay, from civics class and from this class. We know a lot about John Locke, okay, but what did he think about people? Okay, and basically he really truly believes that people, yes, they have those inborn rights, but they also have an inborn good and evil quality to them. When you're born, you have that inborn innate trait to be good or bad. Okay, now if you take psychology classes, we also know that there's nurtures involved too. So that's another day of arguments about nature versus nurture kind of thing. Jean-Jacques Rousseau and his social contract. Remember, a social contract is a nonverbal agreement between you and your government or the people of your government. Okay. Now, what was his views on it? Okay. He truly believed in the will of the people. He believed that everybody should have a say in government. Okay. And that is the general will of the people. Okay. But you need to write it down. Okay, you can't trust the government. Could you imagine? Could you imagine if the United States did not put the Bill of Rights into the Constitution? That First Amendment to the Constitution, the right for religious freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. What if they didn't write it in there? Presidents could have just trampled over your rights to do that. Okay, if it wasn't written down, okay, kind of thing. So that Constitution is very important, and I suggest that you take maybe a little bit of time and read it over. The Declaration of Rights of Man and the Citizens. This document is a framework of writing down those rights, okay? Because again, we didn't write them down yet. All right, we're still Articles of Confederation. All right. And we're still trying to figure out how to run our country while all this stuff is going on over there. Okay. So literally this is the document that they sat down in France and they wrote out all the natural rights of people and how they should apply and how they should be governed. Okay. So it was this was a very important document in history, the Declaration of Rights of Men and its Citizens. Name the empires that make up the gunpowder empires. This is kind of redundant from the definition of gunpowder empires, but please remember the Ottoman, Safavid, and Mughal empires. Now, you also need to know where they're located. All right, on the test, there's going to be a map, and it's going to have one of them highlighted. So you're going to have to remember where on the map are they located. And if you see that over there, you can see the map. Okay, you have the Ottoman, Safavid, and the Mughal empires. And that's how I remember them. I just remember in order: Ottoman, Safavid, Mughal. Ottoman, Safavid, Mughal. Ottoman, Safavid, Mughal. Did I say Ottoman, Safavid, Mughal? Okay. What does this mean? Liberty, equality, fraternity. Horrible French accent. This is the slogan for the French Revolution. Liberty, which is freedom. Equality, which is to be equal. And then fraternity, which is work together, okay, to form a union. Fraternity, just like a fraternity in college, they work together. Okay, they just don't party, they work together. All right, who said this? I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. If you guessed Voltaire, you are correct. Now, I have printed this on social media like over the last 2 years, at least once a month, because I have some really crazy friends out there that are both sides of the political spectrum. And they get mad at me, okay, because, I don't like what a lot of people say out there. I really don't. But I'm not going to tell them not to say it, all right? Because I don't want them to lose their right to the First Amendment of the Constitution, the right to freedom of speech, okay, freedom of expression. It's not my duty to do that, okay? But it is the government's duty to get into that if you're saying things that intentionally hurt other people, okay? That is against the law. You cannot go into a theater and yell fire, and then everybody leaves, runs out, and somebody gets hurt or somebody, God forbid, gets killed. Okay. That is not your freedom to do so, because that caused injury to somebody else. Okay. So that is why when that incident happened on January 6th, okay, a lot of the people that were yelling things out in the crowds, they're being charged with crimes that they incited what happened. Like they were part of the reason why that happened. And it's not because, and they can't yell back, well, I have freedom of speech. No, people were hurt people were injured in that occurrence. Okay, even if they did it in unintentionally, they'd like, oh, I didn't mean that to happen. It happened. Okay, you can't drive your friends to the gas station and you sit in the car and a bunch of them go in and they steal a bunch of stuff and they come back in the car and you drive off and they're caught and you can't, and you're charged for the same crimes as they were. You can't say, I didn't know. Okay, that's not a defense. All right, you were there. Okay, I hope that kind of helps with that. Socialism. Socialism is a form of government or an economic system where the government has a say in what goes on in the daily lives of their citizens. They don't rule on what you're going to wear or what you're going to read or what you're going to watch on TV and all that kind of stuff. Basically, they're just providing everyone basic services such as healthcare, education, housing, food, etc. They're just helping everyone out in their country be healthy and well taken care of, kind of thing. And when we get further along in the class, we're going to discuss, what is socialism, what is social democratic socialism, and that kind of thing, so we can get a clear understanding of socialism. But this is just the basics of it. We're just scratching the surface, okay, kind of thing. Secularism. Secularism is when you're taking the church out of government. Okay, the best example I can give you on that is with schools. Okay, Clio is a public school, so we are a secular school versus Powers, which is it's sponsored by the Catholic Church, so they're private. Okay, and they can pray and talk and have mass on Fridays and things like that, celebrate holidays that have to do with Christianity, like in the building, and we can't. Okay, I can't lead you in prayer. Okay, even though that some of you will be praying on Friday. Okay, I can't say, okay, let's take a moment, pray together, let's hold our hands and do that kind of thing. But I can teach religion. I just can't teach you, to teach you to convert to Christianity. I hope that helps a little bit. If you have a question, just, you feel free to email me and we'll chat about it. What is the biggest difference between the Sunni and the Shiites? And remember that these are Islamic forms of Islam. Sunnis believe that their leader should be a descendant of Muhammad. Okay, and the Shiites believe that their leader should be the best person. Who is the best person at the time? Okay, to lead them. All right, because sometimes, if you're going through the bloodline, sometimes maybe that person is not a very good leader. And you're kind of stuck with them because they're the only ones that are, related to Muhammad, right? So you're kind of stuck with them. Where the Shiites are like, yeah, we're going to go with the best person. Okay, and it's important for you to know this because when we get closer to talking about the 21st century, we have that, fight over there in the Middle East. And so it's very important for us to understand that. Okay. How does assimilation relate to the rise of the Ottoman Empire? Remember, assimilation means that you, when you move into an area, you are you're not changing what you're doing, okay, but you're learning to live with maybe new laws or whatever. With the Ottoman Empire, when they expanded their empires, okay, they didn't force the people that they were conquering to convert to Islam. They did force them to take on their cultural or tradition and their traditions. Okay, they let them be themselves. The only thing that they had to do is follow the laws of the Ottoman Empire. Okay, and that made them successful because the people are like, oh, this isn't too bad. I still can do this, 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 and this. The only thing is I have to follow these laws over here. So they were very successful in expanding their empire because they believed in assimilation. Now, how did they fall? They grew. But how did they fall? Well, how did the Roman Empire fall? How did the Mongolian Empire fell? They fell because they got too big and they couldn't govern effectively the area because they just got too big. Remember they tried to cut the Roman Empire in half, and then one became the Byzantine Empire and the Roman Empire. That didn't work. And then the Mongolian Empire, after Genghis died, remember they cut it in force, and then they started, conflicts. It just didn't work, and then it fell. Okay, size it got too big. They could not control it. They couldn't govern. They couldn't communicate. What were the causes of the French Revolution? Ooh, I bet some of you are like thinking hard about it. What were the causes? Let's go over them. King Louis and Marie Antoinette. Man, did they like to buy stuff. Okay, they liked to look pretty. They liked expensive things. They had a huge palace called Versailles, and they liked gold and diamonds, and oh my gosh, so they literally spent a lot of money making themselves look good. Okay, now if you're starving and you can't feed your family, you're unemployed, you're living in the streets, and you're seeing Louis and Marie looking pretty, buying stuff left and right, all that, would that kind of make you angry? I know I would get angry. The government also would spend. Okay, the big thing that they spent money on, which kind of pissed people off, is remember, France funded the American Revolution. Okay, so the American Revolution's going on here, and the money's going over there to help the colonists. Okay, and France over here, starving, unemployed, no homes, people are sick. They're going through weather conditions that are horrible. They're causing issues with the economy because the farming industry is failing. I mean, so literally all their money, all they can see is their money going overseas to the colonists, okay, to help them while they're having issues over here. Okay, people are pissed. I would be pissed too. Okay, I'm going to be honest. Third one, the whole idea that people all have human rights, that all of you have rights. King Louis had absolute power. Okay, and so people are looking at that and they're literally cold and tired and hungry, and they just want to be heard, and they want to be governed in a way that their voice is heard. Okay. All these three things together led to the breakout of the French Revolution. Viva la Revolution. Okay. And if you like the musical Les Miserables, this is what it's based on. History. La la la. Divine Right of Kings. This one cracks me up. I don't get this one. People back, I want to say, gosh, ever since monarchies in Europe were developed, back with William the Conqueror, believed in the divine right of kings. They believed, the kings and queens believed that God above gave them the power to rule. Okay, so if Connor Vanderhoff came into class and said, guys, God told me last night that I have the power to rule, all of us would look at him going, yeah, I think we need to call a doctor and have you looked at. Sorry, Connor, but I needed somebody to use as an example. All right, we think that was crazy. But back then, people are like, oh, okay, you have the power to rule. We'll listen to you. To me, that's crazy. That's crazy. The Great Schism. The Great Schism. It sounds kind of scary. The Great Schism. No, basically, the Great Schism was the Protestant Reformation that happened in France. Okay, last semester we talked about Reformation, right? And that was happening all around Europe except France. Okay. And then eventually the whole idea of the Catholic Church having too much power, caught wind in France, and there was a separation between the church and the government in France. And that was called the Great Schism. Okay, like I said, it sounds kind of scary to me. Schism. Or does it sound like a disease? I don't know. Anyways, separation of church and state in France. The ideas of the Enlightenment. I like to look at the Enlightenment as this, those cartoon picture of a person, and then they get an idea and the light bulb goes off, and it goes like that. To me, that's the Enlightenment. People went from having ideas given to them by the church, okay, and they finally had the right to have their own ideas. Like, boing, okay, that's the Enlightenment. So what are some of the ideas that came out of the Enlightenment altogether? Number one, people have natural rights. We've been discussing this since the academic vocabulary section. Everyone, because you're a human being, have rights, and do not let the government take those rights away from you. Again, they can govern them, but they cannot take them away from you. Two, problems can be solved by using reasoning. You can sit down with somebody and talk out an issue. You don't have to pick up a weapon and fight it out. Okay? Governments at this time should sit down and discuss things instead of fighting it out. And then governments should serve the people, not the kings, not the queens, not the wealthy, and not the people in churches, like that rule churches. Okay, governments should serve all of the people. Okay, got it? Natural rights. Okay, solve problems through reasoning. And the government should represent all of the people, should serve all of the people. Okay. The birth of Hinduism. Where was it? All right, think real hard. Most Hindus live in India. What empire was in India? Starts with an M. The Mughals. Who is Toussaint Louverture? I love the name Toussaint. Toussaint Louverture. Who was he? Who was this guy? He actually was the leader of the Haitian Revolution and fought for equality. Did you even know that Haiti had a revolution until now? That's crazy. A lot of people did not realize that the little island of Haiti was so important during this time in history. How crazy is that? That little island of Haiti. First of all, Toussaint was a very gifted military expert. Okay, he knew what to do. Guys, I'm telling you right now, the most successful teams, I'm talking athletic teams, know their enemy. Okay, and that's exactly what Toussaint did. Okay, he knew how to rise up against the enemy. Where was their strengths? Where were the weaknesses? And how can we use them to our advantage? That was Toussaint. Okay. Then he turned the slave society into an independent black state, which was phenomenal. Basically, he got everyone who was black in Haiti to come together and work together as a state. All right. Big accomplishment. Then he switched alliances from Spain, because Spain was backing the slaves in Haiti, to France. Remember, France controlled Haiti. Haiti was a colony of France. Okay. Huge. Okay, so kind of Toussaint was kind of like a spy, You know what I mean? Kind of figuring out what France is up to before, things happen. And then unfortunately, Toussaint died in France. Napoleon, we won't go there. My feelings on Napoleon. Napoleon invited Toussaint L'Ouverture to France to discuss the issues in Haiti. How can we solve the issues in Haiti? And while, Toussaint landed in France, he was taken into custody, put in jailed, and eventually he died of malnutrition, meaning he starved to death. They didn't feed him. Okay, poor guy. What is the religion of Haiti? Voodoo. Voodoo. Okay. Did you know that 60% of the coffee at this time was exported throughout the world from Haiti? That is crazy. All right, that's how important Haiti was to the global economy at this time. All right, 60% of the coffee came from Haiti. Okay, sugar came from Haiti too. It was crazy. Money, 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 money. Okay, it was coming through Haiti. Now, the 3 causes of the Haitian Revolution. 2 of them are obvious. Third one, you might not remember. Okay, so I want to make sure I go through that third one. Okay, number 1, racial hatred. Okay, huge racial hatred going on in Haiti between the whites, the blacks, and even within the black community itself between the light-skinned and the dark-skinned. It was crazy how divided the country was racially at that time. But eventually they came together, the blacks in Haiti to rise up against, the French. The slave conditions were horrible, and what they did to slaves in Haiti. I wish I was with you in class so we could go over some of the, horrible details of slavery, and I will make a point to add it into the lessons in the future. But if you want, I encourage you to go online and search out some documentaries on slavery, and you'll see how brutal slavery was, and the impact that brutality has on society today is amazing to study. So when we start getting to that point in where we're talking about the 21st century, we're going to talk about race relations and the impact of slavery has on the people of today. Okay, the people of today. Is amazing research out there on that. Number 3 is the influence of the French Revolution. Remember, Haiti was controlled by France. France won their revolution. Woo, the people won. Everybody has liberty, equality, fraternity. Yay! Haiti didn't have it. Why? Why wouldn't Haiti be given liberty, equality, fraternity? Okay, I want you to think about it. Liberty, freedom, equality, enough said there. Fraternity, rule together. Think about that 60% of coffee. Who's getting that profit? They had no intentions to free Haiti at this time. So the slaves had every right in the world to get together and rise up against that government and have a revolution. Okay, every right to do so. Okay. Critical thinking. This section of critical thinking questions is asking you to process history. Read something to interpret it, look at a map, answer the questions, a graphing, that kind of stuff, all right? Usually I leave it here. I say, okay, guys, there's going to be some critical thinking and describe them, and that's it. I don't give you any more. This time I'm going to give you some of them so you can think about them and go into the test a little more prepared for the critical thinking. Okay, so let's look at a few of them. Now, first of all, you're going to develop a timeline, and these are the events in history, that I want you to put in order. Right now, they're in alphabetical order. I want you to put them in your notes in order of when they had it. So what was the first event, second, and it goes closest to, modern times. So you have the American Revolution, Crusades, French Revolution, Haitian Revolution, Reformation, the Renaissance, and the Scientific Revolution. Put them in order. And then on the test, you're going to be given a couple of timelines to look at. And then you have to determine, okay, which timeline is correct? Which one has them all in the right order? Okay, and I'll give you a hint. Do Crusades are the first one. So you're going to want to put Crusades and then look up the dates of all the other ones and put them in order. Okay, so you got to develop a timeline with all 7 of those events. Okay, then we have to read this paragraph. Okay, and I'll read it for you. Ready? If man in the state of nature is free and lord of his own possessions, why will he give up his freedom? The answer is that the right of the state of nature are consistently exposed to the attack by others. Hence, each man joins in society to preserve his life, liberty, and property. Where the ruler endures to take away the property of the people to reduce them to slavery, they then remove from any further obedience and left to the rise up the force and violence. John Locke, 1690. So basically, excuse me, I got an eyelash there. Basically, what major event was sparked by this statement? So I want you to think about it. And I didn't read it as well as I wanted to read it, but I'm sorry. It's early. But I want you to look that over again and think about what major event did you study that this sparked off? You might want to look at the term life, liberty, and property and think really hard. Where did I hear that before? Okay. Then we have to look at this picture. And I know, guys, I don't want to get tons of emails saying, Lyszczyk, that revolution propaganda picture looks horrible. I know, but it's the only one I could find, and I had to use that one. Okay? So what you need to do is figure out what revolution did that represent. Okay, so look at the language that is used in it. What slogans are used in it? What sounds familiar? And then put it together with the revolution that we studied in this unit. Which one? Okay. Now, what was the cause of Galileo's trial? All right. So why did Galileo? Why was he put on trial? Okay. What did they accuse him of? Okay, kind of thing. Galileo? Like, what was the big deal with him? Remember, he was a scientist. So what was going on with him? All right. And so what you're going to want to do is just look him up, just Google him and say, okay, you don't need to know when he was born, where he was born, that kind of thing. But I would look and go, maybe look in Google Galileo's trial, and you'll get an idea of what it was about. You do not need to know the outcome, but it is kind of interesting. So you might want to look it up. Okay. You might want to read a little bit farther than what it was and figure out what happened. Now, there's another passage I'm going to try to read through for you. And then you're looking for what does it mean by general will? What is the view of public office in this writing? Like, how do you get it kind of thing? And what is it modeled from? Okay. So law is an expression of the general will of all citizens have the right to concur personally or through the representatives. In its formation, it must be the same for all, whether it protects or punishes, All citizens being equal before are equally admissible to public office, positions, and employments according to the capacity and without other distractions than the virtues or their talents. Declaration of Rights of Men and Citizens, French National Assembly, 1789. Okay. What I want you to look at is, look at those things. Look for the general will. Like, what does that mean? Public office, like how do they believe people should be put into public office? And what other documents did was modeled from the Declaration of Rights of Man? Okay, what other things in history did they use this and go, ooh, let's use the Declaration of Rights of Man as like an outline, and we'll make it our own kind of thing. Okay, so look it over. If you have questions, again, email us. Let us know. Email Bowers, Elliott, and myself. We'll help you out. Now, on the test, there'll be maps and graphs and graphic organizers for you to look at, and then, have the questions to go with them. I didn't put all of them on there because honestly, some of them, it's like obvious. I remember I'm not sitting here trying to go, this is going to trick them. Okay. I want you to do well. I can't make it easy peasy, but I have to make it a little challenging for you, but I don't purposely try to trick you when I'm making up tests. Okay. I promise you, I'm not trying to trick you. All right. My advice for studying. All right. If you are still working on filling out your self-assessment and making flashcards and possibly maybe making a Kahoot, all right, to study, that's prepping for your exams. That's not studying for your exams. Studying is when you're actually going through your flashcards, going through your notes, playing Kahoot, maybe setting up a Zoom with a friend or a couple of friends and studying. Maybe you should be doing that Thursday evening, is having a Zoom meeting with friends, kind of thing, and studying that way. That's studying. So make sure that you are prepared. You should be already prepared by now. And then from now on, you should be studying. Okay. Again, I'm not here to trick you. If you have any questions, please contact Mr. Elliott, Mr. Bowers, or myself. We're available for questions. Now, if you're emailing us like at 9:00 at night, or stalking us on social media and finding us and trying to get us a hold of us that way, at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, I can't promise you we're going to respond. All right. I know I'm old. Mr. Elliott's older than I am. We need our sleep. But Mr. Bowers is a little bit younger. Maybe he'll answer you. I don't know. Okay. But if it's, during school hours or just after school hours, we will reach out to you and answer those questions. Okay. Please make sure that you are safe, healthy, and remember, I love you. And I know all of you will be fantastic on this test. All right. You guys have a great one. All right.